Okay, now we're recording. So hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for our, our third Functional Life Forum with Dr. Don Joergens. And today is going to be about the mental health and the microbiome, which is actually something that I'm really interested in. So that's our topic. So what happens is, if you haven't joined us before, we have the discussion. Dr. Don is our resident expert, and then at the end we come up with the next subject to keep going for in 2 weeks, every other Wednesday. It's going on. So Dr. John, you want to get us going, or do you want me to read?
Yeah.
You just get us going.
No, I'll get us going.
All right. Do you want me to tell you who's on the line, since you can't see?
I actually can see. It's
Okay.
Me twice. Mary Ellen, Donna, David, Linda, 207 number. That's all I see.
Yeah, that's all I see too. Okay. And Linda. Yeah. Okay.
It's unfortunate for everyone else to miss tonight, but okay. All right. Today we're talking about mental health and the microbiome. Can you see me okay? Is that right?
Yes, we see you great.
Okay. Before I start, there's 2 books. Now, I'll send this information to Camille, and Camille will distribute it. 2 books that I think are pretty good in the discussion we're going to have tonight. One book you may have heard of called Breaking the Vicious Cycle. It's an older book, kind of came out before like SIBO diets and stuff like that. Elaine Gottschall, Breaking the Vicious Cycle, a really good book. Way ahead of its time, and I wanted to mention it today. The other one is a fantastic book by Dr. What's her name? McBride, Campbell McBride, Natasha Campbell McBride, Gut and Psychology Syndrome. And you may recognize that from GAPS diet, GAPS, GAPS diet, comes from her work, and that really addresses SIBO, small intestine, bowel overgrowth syndrome, if you will. So today, what I'd like to do is I'm going to do a little bit different. I'm going to try and do a pretty relatively short. Camille, if you just give me like a 20-minute mark, I'm going to try and talk, and then we'll open up for discussions. If at any time someone wants to jump in with a question, observation, anything, just jump right in. But I want to lay out the groundwork. I'm very excited about presenting tonight. Now, it's I think there is a lot of, it's difficult. There's a lot of stuff that's confusing when it comes to the microbiome, especially today. There's so much information out there. We talk about the gut-brain axis and what have you. I think I may have come up with something that kind of presents a global overview. And then goes through the diets and some other condition states, very common ones, and big ones, by the way, and then breaks it out and down because there's so much stuff out there. I'm really excited about it today. Okay, so 3 things I want you to think about. It starts with the soil. Soil to our gut or microbiome by eating, and then the brain. Soil, microbiome, or gut, and brain. And it's these 3 things. And it all starts in the soil. If you take a handful of soil, you're looking at everything. You're looking at everything that makes the fetus and our cells, right? We come and emerge from the soil. And dependent upon that soil is going to be how the plant uptakes that and transfers a whole bunch of things. Now, we often think about, and it's correctly and rightly so, we think about the plant nutritionally, but what we fail to recognize is that a plant doesn't have a stomach or intestines, and that the soil is the intestines or the gut of the plant. I'm gonna say that again. The soil is the gut of the plant. That's really important to understand. This really needs to be embraced more by everyone, especially practitioners. Anyone out there who's working with someone with their gut. Let's start to think from the soil up. It's really important to understand that our gut microbiome initiates from the dirt, initiates from around the roots and uptaken into the plants to an extent, but around the roots of the plant. Also, as an interesting thought, the root system of a plant is extended 100-fold by the fungal lacings or rhizomes that come out from the root. And what's really cool, and we're going to get into this because you're going to see a pattern emerge from the plant and the soil to us, to the brain. It's really exceptional. So the fungal aspect, it connects, this 100-fold connects roots and plants to each other. Plenty of research out there. When one plant is being affected by an overgrowth or being attacked by bugs or some disease state, it communicates to other plants so they can start taking action before it ever occurs to them. This is not science fiction. This is actual reality, and you're going to see the connection from here. Think about the communication, gut-brain axis in the brain. It starts with the plants in the soil. It just reflects up into greater evolutionary growth. Okay, it's called horizontal transmission, the aspect of the dirt and the microbiota in plants being transmitted horizontally into our own microbiome. This leads to the understanding, or the increased understanding. Everyone, for the most part, hears about pesticides, the whole glyphosate debacle, which is for anyone out there, affects our mitochondria. It poisons our gut directly, but it also poisons and decreases the microbiome of the plant. Not only is the pesticides and these weed killers, they're also killing the microbiome of the plants, and they're being sterilized. Our soil is being sterilized, and thus it can't be transmitted to us into our microbiome from the soil to the gut. Really important. There's a couple of really great hypotheses, and they're more than hypotheses. They're true, in my opinion. One is the microbial old friends, and what that means is that beneficial microbiomes are transmitted to us. They've been developing for 400 million years, synergistically with plants, and then of course synergistically with us. The aspect that the beneficial microbiome is the old friends are transmitted to us. And it's these beneficial bacteria, it's these beneficial microbiomes initiated by soil. And of course, just so we understand, our biome, right, that we get, the fetus gets, is of course has already been cultured, has already been evolved within us, and is transmitted by the mother, which I hope we'll get to in just a little bit. But it's really important as well to note that the mother's or ours is constantly supported, again, by the food we eat, the plants we eat, even the type of meat we eat, that is constantly, in essence, fine-tuned. The microbiota within our gut is listening, is being fine-tuned by the microbiome in the soil. It's important to understand that the environment outside is signaling the environment inside. This is called the microbial old friends. Now, the other one, which is really cool, is the hygiene hypothesis. When we talk about hygiene, we're all thinking about, sanitation, all this, which has changed a lot of disease states. Absolutely true. But the hygiene hypothesis goes a little bit further. It talks about the absolute need of pathological microbes to be incident, to be exposed, especially in early childhood, to the gut. Let me see, some question. That I don't want to get to the neuroimmunological aspect, but it's important for pathological to be exposed to the gut so that it starts to develop. And what we see here, it reacts. It has to strengthen against it. And we all understand that. Expose the baby to dirt, into other infections. And we think about on an immunological level of our own immune system. But it really also begins, and perhaps truly begins, in the microbiome. And we see rural children who are raised on farms, much lower incidence of asthma, much lower incidence of ectopic eczema, hay fever, much lower instances. And of course, overall, decreased autoimmune disease states. Just as a thought, a lot of our immunological issues, a lot of our immunological issues are absolutely attributable to a gut dysfunction, dysbiosis, what have you. So the old friends hypothesis and the hygiene hypothesis being the aspect also of the old friends, we see an anti-inflammatory condition state. Anti-inflammatory mechanisms are promoted early on and continually by the exposure to the soil microbiome. Really important. Okay. One more thing I just want to talk about the soil, the biodiversity hypothesis. Biodiversity hypothesis, one last thing. I know it's a lot of hypothesis, but old friends, hygiene, but looking at the aspect of needs, we need, especially our children, exposure to pathological, which is in the dirt, exposure, and then biodiversity. Biodiversity in the microbes of the soil, we see a biodiversity in the microbiome. Sterilize or decrease the biodiversity in the soil, we're going to see a reflective decrease in the microbiome diversity, which is one of the major problems that we're going to see in gut-related issues. Okay, so let's look at the microbiome. Now, I said earlier, and I just love this, the soil is the gut of the plant. It's the gut of the plant. The microbiome is the soil of our body. The microbiome is the soil of our body. Think about it. Inside our intestines, we have this, massively larger amount, 10 times or more of cells, of viruses, of bacteria, and they're colonizing our gut. But think of them all together. They're like soil. They're like our soil, from which they produce and do many things for our body. Particularly today, we're talking about our brain and the aspect of mental health. But those very interesting, very easy to understand concepts make it, I think, make it very powerful for us as practitioners to make a difference. Yeah, I mean, exposure to soil microbes has been experimentally shown to increase gut microbiome. And really what it is eating dirt. The aspect of putting small amounts of highly diverse dirt into an individual absolutely correlates with expanding the diversity of the individual's gut microbiome. This is going to become really important when we actually talk about some very simple and very powerful measures to help ourselves as well as our clients. And just some thoughts. I'm going to do 2 studies, and I'm throwing this out there. One, to make us think broader, which is going to allow us to think, I really do believe at the end of this is going to give us an enhanced understanding of this complex subject. But I'm going to throw 2 studies in there. But I just want to think about a couple of things. Microbiome, everyone hears, is just one little piece that perhaps everyone hears, but this is a truth. Serotonin, one of the neurotransmitters, it starts in the gut. The largest amount of serotonin is produced in the gut. And actually, it's true. It affects the serotonin mechanism, but it really starts with tryptophan. And just as a thought, one little piece of a little pearl. Sleep issues. A lot of people hear, well, someone has some sleep issues, give them some tryptophan. It's a amino acid. Turkey has a higher percentage of tryptophan. But really, and that's okay. That's okay to give a pill. That's okay to give something so someone gets some sleep induction. It's really important in the sleep induction cycle for serotonin. Tryptophan converts to serotonin. That the absolute the cure is in understanding getting the gut in balance, so the tryptophan mechanism actually works to produce serotonin in our soil. But it's really important that the brain, this brain-gut axis is balanced and working well, which we're going to get into in a second. 2 studies. A very cool mice study, pretty much basically showed a disruption in the mice microbiome. Absolutely mimicked behavioral mimicry of a human for anxiety, depression, and even autism. And anyone, Dan protocols, anyone working with autistic children knows that they have to go into the gut. However, I believe a far more potent approach to helping the autistic child, there's many things, we're not doing that today, is understanding how to get the gut into a much more powerful homeostatic balance. The other study, which is really John Cryan, Cork College, Ireland, did a fantastic study. He showed if you took mice and he raised them in a sterile environment, and the mice were pretty much germ-free. Now, think about that with a lot of the thought that has been going out there for the past 10 years. You know, the children and we hear it often from the holistic community. Let the children go in the dirt. Let them play in the dirt. Let them eat the dirt. And it's so damn right. Except a lot of the dirt, of course, is around houses, fertilizer, Roundup. That's a bad thing to be having to eat that. But is that we're making our children sterile, microbial hand washes, wipes, constantly keeping the children that. We are harming our children to an unbelievable degree. The study of mice is absolutely showing, this was a landmark study. So what he showed was that in these mice, when they lacked the ability to recognize, oh yeah, that was it. In this study, in sterile mice community, germ-free, the mice in a disrupted microbial system or microbiome, the mice lacked the ability to recognize or interact with others in their community. Even once they've interacted, they failed to recognize other mice even once interacting. What is this? This shows a decreased socialization. Of course, which we see in certain states of mental ill health, autism, ADD, other things along those lines. But what it also is representative of is that our microbiome, again, gut-brain axis, is not only indirectly talking to the brain, but also directly crossing over and actually getting across the blood-brain barrier in certain instances, directly influencing the brain to ensure a greater degree of social behavior. Why? The microbiome inside of you wants to continue on. Without social ability, there's no reproduction or poor reproduction. So it's really interesting that the evolution, the symbiotic evolution of our microbiome, again with our brain, is really important in socialization. So when we see children, again, on the spectrum, mental health components of inability of socialization, again, as one aspect of cost of microbiome. Microbiome, gut is so incredibly important. I think that study was so powerful in its realization. The brain. I'm gonna go through this pretty quick, but I'm gonna stop on one point, which I know we're all, I believe we're all know about, understand, and I'm just gonna go a little bit deeper on the aspect of stress, mental health, stress. It is the key trigger in so many effective aspects of mental health. So I decided to throw this in here and really get us talking on it. The brain, I want to go back to the fungal aspect of the fungal roots coming off of the plant roots, increasing them 100-fold, and lacing and interacting with each other from plant to plant to plant to plant. In essence, creating almost a neural web of communication. And we see that in our own brain, in the neuronal web of our brain. And this is my opinion, I haven't, but it is almost is an expression of this plant earth-based component upon which we've evolved from. We're just seeing it at a higher evolved level, still connected to it, very much connected and need to connect to it. I really love thinking about it this way, showing the lack of separation, and there is the absolute non-separation of the body from the earth. Gut-brain axis. It's bidirectional. So the gut-brain, brain-gut is a bidirectional communication between the central nervous system and the microbes in the gut. An absolute communication between the totality of the gut and the brain and aspects of the microbial system brain. Now, I've talked about this in the past, the autonomic nervous system. It's going to come into play here. The vagal nerve. Lots of research. Anyone out there looking at this? Anyone out there doing breath and meditation and all of that, which we'll talk about just a little bit, maybe when we're in our discussion, we'll open it up. The vagal nerve is what's taking the communication. It's reading the messages from inside the small intestine, large intestines. It's reading that information, particularly the large intestine, but also small, both, and taking that to the brain. That's the one direction up from the gut to the brain. Now, what are they saying? How are they responding? And all of the information from being normal function to also being dysfunctional communication, just like a family. You know, good communication, we got a good family or good relationship. Dysfunctional communication, we've got a bad relationship. So let me jump into the stress. I don't think this is well understood. It's a basic concept, but I think it always needs to be reminded and hammered in. So that stress is first registered by the brain, visually, auditorily, or cognitively. It's first responded there, but it is from it, and whatever actions or whatever reflexes, whatever is going to occur in the brain itself happens. Another subject. But it also drives straight down into the gut. We have evolved in a synergy, in a symbiosis, that the gut reacts to stress. It is an important partner, perhaps one of the most vital partners in reacting to stress. And how does it do that? It actually, in how it communicates and releases and changes its communication and from serotonin to other neurotransmitter components to other aspects. And we can get into, we won't get into it actually that much today, but it's going to message up. And how it does, it message up into the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary axis, the stress axis, right? Many people talk about, write about, and that we really should know. That goes right, HPA, hypothalamic pituitary, adrenaline, also thyroid's in there, HPA, HPT axis. And what it does is that it dampens the sympathetic output. It dampens the fight or flight and fear. It dampens that. That's what a healthy gut microbiome does. And that's what the brain and the body relation expects, the brain, gut to brain coming up the axis, reaction to stress. Now, it's a microbiome symbiosis. Yes. So what happens in a gut dysbiosis, I'm going to go into a few of them. What happens when we have a dysfunctional gut is we have a dysfunctional response to stress. And that dysfunctional response to stress eliminates the possibility of dampening that HPA reaction, that stress response. We're always talking about stress, and we're looking at the gut, but we really need to look at the gut even more. And I've talked about this before. Hopefully I can pull it together for everybody here from the aspect of putting probiotics in by themselves and not doing other things. So when we have an unbalanced gut, we have an unbalanced reaction, and this allows for the development on one level and one main tangent also, or one main pathway, allows for the aspect for anxiety, depression, where we see even to the aspects of bipolar and even schizophrenia. And those things have other causative mechanisms, but they also start in the inability to dampen brain output, particularly in the unbalanced stress response. Any questions?
We're coming on about 8:30. We had a couple people make comments in the chat.
Okay, sure.
One, Mary Ellen had said, my grandmother always said, a little bit of dirt eaten every day is good for us.
Mm-hmm.
I had also never heard, I came out of the organic agricultural world, and I had never actually heard of the soil as like a plant's microbiome, but I guess that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, or the plant's gut. Yeah, it's the plant.
Yeah, the soil is the gut of the plant. I was writing it down. Donna had written, Dr. Axe wrote a great book called Eat Dirt. You mentioned two books, and Eat Dirt. I can put them all in our bookstore because I made a little section on like eating and diets and health and nutrition or something, because I'm trying to, so when things come up in our discussions, I will create those books, put them in our book library. So anyone watching this, whenever, you can go over to our bookstore and get that. And you talked about the gut and psychology syndrome. I had the great pleasure of being with Natasha day, when she flew over here. Yeah, it was pretty cool in my organic world. I got to hear, she was one of our keynote speakers, so I got to meet Natasha and talk to her about it. So I have assigned one of her books because I have an autistic child, so I was really interested in her work way back. And it actually made a huge difference. One of the questions I wrote, though, when you were talking about the mice, did you ever do any human studies to see the difference in mental health once they change diet? Because it seems easy enough to do. Actually, I can say I saw a huge difference when I changed my own daughters over.
Yeah, well, we know when we do that, it's really empirical evidence. That's empirical knowledge, empirical evidence, right? It's very hard to do. It's easy to do with mice. Put them in sterile environments, feed them specific things. Check.
Right.
It's almost impossible with human populations.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, but
I was just going to say, Donna had a question in the same, and anyone can talk. I don't have to be the only one talking. You guys can raise your hand and talk to Dr. John too. She wrote, was the intent of the research to see if a sterile environment created lower socialization? No,
that was the outcome. The hypothetical question, what would happen if? What would happen if? Certainly they weren't expecting to see a lack of interaction within those that they're already, or lack of socialization within those. I'm going to say again, a lack of recognition. It goes to the aspect of recognition of those that interacted. Mice would interact with mice and then fail to recognize them. And so you're talking about an incredible impact or control mechanism of the gut microbiome to the more primitive brain. But we have to recognize also that primitive brain is deep in our brains, the limbic brain, the other aspects of the sublayers. We have greater control over them from the top down, from our cortex, our frontal lobes. But it's really always important to remember that our primitive brains are always in play.
Yeah, many people consider the microbiome our second brain. I've heard it's the skin. I've heard it's a lot of things, but
it really is. It really is. Yep.
Yeah. And really Americans seem to have not as much bacteria and flora as other areas, and I think that has a lot to do with a lot of things.
Actually, I'm going to jump into that. on the foods and diets. So I'm just going to quickly go over those.
Yeah, Mary Ellen has a question up here too. Let's just get through these first. Why are people diagnosed with bipolar in their teens? Is that something you could answer?
Well, let's break it into two different parts. They're diagnosed with bipolarism because there are a set of diagnostic criteria that they'll meet, and the MD will put a label on them. I'm not a big believer in labels, and it's even on my website. It's in my brochure for functional brain. We are not our label.
Totally agree.
You know? So in essence, they label these children, and what we're looking at bipolarism, and you just said it. And there's multiple things to think about here, but just think what you said, Camille. The gut is our second brain. If the gut is our second brain, what happens when two brains are saying two different things? Bipolar. They're right? Now, bipolarism, I can look at that from the aspect of hemispherical imbalance in the brain, absolutely, but we must consider that the truly ancient brain, the one that was there before our cortex actually developed, was this microbiome. Yes, it was evolving, but it was there. It's still in there. So that when these two brains are out of harmonics, we can see aspects of schizophrenia, bipolarism. It makes so much sense, I think.
Has schizophrenia or bipolar or anything ever been treated with food? Are there doctors that do that?
Landmark study in 1960s. Actually, I read this when I was in school, in chiropractic school, and then I had to rediscover it and find it. I did and lost it again. Anyhow, it was a psychiatrist or a psychologist who was doing a study on food nutrition. He went to penitentiary, maximum security penitentiary, really hardened criminals, long-term sentences, and they were in different wings. And what he did, and he wasn't looking for this. I thought he was trying to do something about nutrients, but what he found was he put one on meats. He took out all carbohydrates, and what he did was, in essence, he eliminated gluten. And then he put one on a regular diet that was in the prison. And those who are hardened, a lot of mental issues, a lot of bipolarism, schizophrenia, 80% of the prisoners reduced and eliminated their psychological, psychiatric disorders and became docile, became more powerful in their expression. 80%.
Wow.
Yes.
And all they did was take out gluten?
Basically, that was the difference for the most part. And of course, if you take out gluten, they also were reducing the carbohydrate. We'll talk about later, like specific. They were
right.
Carbohydrate reducing, which wasn't feeding a pathological imbalance for also, but primarily. And what he did was he recognized that and actually started playing with it. He kept getting the same results.
Yeah, Mary Ellen just wrote. Mary Ellen, you can unmute and talk as well. Mary Ellen just wrote, though, it seems like there is an event that happens and then the bipolar diagnosis. That is a great observation. Bipolar, meaning the brain and the gut are doing two different things. Just acknowledging.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that it's an event like that. Can it happen? Mary Ellen, I would say absolutely. Can we see that? And where that would be a massive stressor, or enough of a stressor to collapse the brain and the brain's ability to connect to the microbiome. But is it possible? Of course it is. A heart attack. A person's going along, exercising, everything's okay, and the next moment they die of a heart attack. We know that, of course, the clotting, atherosclerosis, the hardening of the arteries was building over time, often decades. But then we see the expression of the event instantaneously in a heart attack. They didn't just become that from one moment to the next. So the same thing can be said for the psychological mental health issue of bipolarism or what have you. Often there are telltale signs. There's changes, but they're often not recognized before it occurs. But it's possible that someone could have a stressor event, a PTSD-like thing. It's the aspect of a stressor. PTSD is just the stress is stuck, the brain is stuck, and they're having this recurrent aspect of a weakened state. But it's the same thing, and an expression of bipolarism, a mood disorder, with a borderline personality disorder. All these things can actually, and of course, depression and anxiety as more common things.
Yeah. So what do you think is some of the best ways to keep a healthy microbiome going?
All right. Well, one thing I'm going to send you, but I want to talk about now, I call it the dirty sweet salad. I think it is such and this is my own creation, actually. The dirty sweet salad. We take root vegetables, right? And root vegetables, of course, have the dirt. We want organic. We want organic. We would love to get them from local organic farmers, nice and dirty. Now, we're not going to, but nice and dirty local organic farmers. Radishes, other things along those lines. We want it raw. We want it raw because we don't want to kill the microbiome. We don't want to kill the microbiota. And we also don't want to kill the enzymes in both either. The enzyme component is extremely important. So it's a nice salad. In the salad, how we clean it is we don't brush or use any type of disinfectant on it. We lightly rinse it off. And if you lightly rinse it off in a salad, or even in a serving of salad, you're probably going to get 500 milligrams of dirt and microbiome in the salad. It's not grit or anything like that. But it's still clinging to all of the roots. And by the way, people have the carrots, all this. Chop the roots up. Don't chop the radish and throw the root out. Chop it up, put it in the salad. Now, to this, we want to of course, you would want to use a fermented organic raw mother apple cider vinegar. You also want for the sweetness. I was like, what? I can't remember. The sweet is raw honey, because the honey is going to have the pollen and you want, of course, local. Anyone. I always tell my clients, and of course, in the past, my patients, we want honey within a 10-mile raw honey that is from a apiary within 10 miles, because you're going to local flora. Honey, raw honey, we're going to use the just washed vegetables. We want that dirt in there. We're going to use a raw organic apple cider vinegar. If you want to do some other things, if you want to make a different type of dressing, I would use a raw milk yogurt or something along those lines, raw milk sour cream, to make something, and then you're getting vitamin D and other things within that, and enzymes. And that's the dirty sweet salad. That is absolutely something that can fix microbiome issues, and it's so critically important. So that's one of my dirty little secrets.
That sounds delicious. Marianne, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was waving to my son.
Oh, okay.
He's going to the gym.
Okay.
Good man.
Yeah.
You guys can unmute and talk to Dr. Dunn too. You don't have to do the chat, but.
Yeah. I just want to quickly, if I could just do the food and diet stuff, just a brief overthrow. We'll bring it all together. I know anyone who's working with clients is looking at altering the diet. So just some basic things, right? SIBO, which is the gut psychology syndrome, small intestine bowel overgrowth. And that is simply the small intestine should not have a lot of the microbiome in it for various reasons. It starts to culture up. We have aspects of the ileocecal valve failures and things along those lines. And for other reasons, it gets up into the small intestine and creates havoc up there. This is where we see a lot of gas, bloating, malabsorption, particularly issues, people losing weight. And of course, that sets up inappropriate transit and problem coming back down to the colon as well. The other thing, intestinal dysbiosis, dysfunction. hear the term intestinal dysbiosis. And really, this is a microbiome problem in the large intestines. This is where we have our imbalances or problems causing microbiome issues. But the three things. One, where we see an increase of pathogens, the beneficial bacteria or the beneficial microbiome aspects, depending upon decrease, and some pathogens come up. And what we see is the expression of pathogens producing toxins and other things along those lines, as well as the beneficial not producing enough of their byproducts, upon which from vitamins to nutrients that we require, as well as detoxification aspects that should be going on as well. And of course, causes a dysfunction or a dysbiosis, having all the problems we talked about now. The other thing is a shifted, which is what you talked about, Camille, is a shifted it's a microbial colonization pattern. It's a MCP, a microbial colonization pattern. And what this is that there's big types of bacteria and other types of microbiota to yeast and other things that exist in a very nice balance. It's very it can be region specific. It's very different, definitely cultural, genetic specific, of course within families, but it can vary. And what we see is a shift in that colonization. Again, it's a dysbiosis, but it's a different type of dysbiosis. This is really nicely tested by a company, Ubiome, capital U-B-I-O-M-E. Ubiome. Test is pretty inexpensive, and they just give you pretty much a basis, like where is your overall colonization pattern? Is it really, really good, or is it really, really crappy? And at times they'll show just one significant, the most significant type of overgrowth or issue upon which you can specifically direct a supplemental protocol to help. So I like Ubiome. And overgrowth, candida type effects. First starting like it's the fermentation syndrome. Everyone hears about candida albicans. It's an overgrowth problem that has its own issues, but all of those are intestinal dysbiosis. Now, the intestinal issue, of course, leads to a leaky gut potential. Everyone hears about leaky gut, and that brings in its own problems. This is where we see a leaky gut, things leaking out, larger molecules leaking out, and where it can start autoimmune type problems. And this is where also we can see the schizophrenia is the different types of effects, all the way to joint pain, inflammation on its own, things along those lines. Now, the thing to recognize in the microbiome when we see imbalances, we're looking at possible inflammatory changes in the gut, also free radical oxidative stress issues. And by the way, this is where David's product in the massively amazing spectrum types of effects that it does, which I'm still trying to grapple with. But one of the things is that, as it gets into the gut, a mass effect on reducing oxidative stress in the gut. It could have some of these profound reverberations that his sees. And of course, the mitochondrial dysfunction, both in the cells, but also mitochondrial dysfunction in the microbiome, in the bugs, in the gut, in the soil of our gut. And that's where glyphosates affect Shikatami pathway. I can always never remember what it is, but that's where glyphosates affect the mitochondria in the soil bugs of our gut, shutting them down, making them weak as well. So the diets, we have diets like in the GAPS diet that Dr. McBride put out, and that was a development. Another one like specific carbohydrate diet. Now, I think this is a broad base that everyone kind of practices. They reduce the carbohydrates, thinking and correctly thinking, so that the bad bacteria won't proliferate, won't create issues. And we see a lot of people with their carbohydrates that they have problems. It affects worse. I also want to throw in here, there are gut bacteria that do really poorly with fats, that they eat the fats. and this is just as a throw-in, at times we need to reduce the fats. Often you're going to see bile, gallbladder issues, poor bile salts, problems along those lines. We're going to see the dysbiosis, or the shift is in these pathogens that eat fat, fatty acids, and creates problems. So we're reducing the carbs, thinking, why is it getting better when actually the fats need to be reduced? It's not a carbohydrate-based issue. Anyhow, the specific carbohydrate diet reduces that, and of course it's taking out things like gluten, grains, lectins. So it's taking out a bunch of things, not just reducing the carbohydrate profile. There are other things coming out. The GAPS diet is really a specific carbohydrate diet. She just increased the nutritional values and made sure the nutrition was there. She did a 6-step process of elimination, and kind of starts with cooked foods, cooked vegetables, very bland, no seasoning, and starts to shift it to more raw foods. Of course, she eliminates gluten, because she eliminates grains, and things along those lines. And the other, FODMAP diet. People hear about FODMAPs. That's fermented oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. Polyols are alcohol. They are they're alcohol, sugar alcohols, right? Okay, thank you, Don. Sugar alcohols. Sugar alcohols would be something like erythritol. Sugar alcohol is used as a sugar substitute in the same ratios. If you use a cup of sugar, you use a cup of a polyol, like erythritol. Unlike sweeteners, which are much sweeter and used in much less amounts. So shift FODMAPs and take that out of the diet for specific reasons. Now, one quick finish on this. Back to the gut-brain aspect. I've talked about this in the past. I'm just going to talk about it again here. The autonomic nervous system is the aspect of the vagus nerve, taking and communicating, getting information up. It also sends some information down, and also the sympathetics also driving down, affecting it. Now you're starting to see a bigger picture. Remember I said, stress, brain reacts, drives down to the second brain, expects the second brain to, in essence, absorb the stress, have a response that dampens the HPA, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the stress axis, dampens that response, so the sympathetics come down. And this is, so the autonomic nervous system balance, we can see from my talks and my passion, is so vital. And this is where we see why specific types of meditation, breathing, TENS unit, applications to the ear, and of course the success and things along the lines of acupuncture, again, driving the parasympathetic response. They don't mean to, but they do, and having results. So we're seeing kind of a full thing. And the autonomic nervous system, just one thing that I go around and talk and teach people about is that the sympathetics, that sympathetic aspect, the food for that, we want those on raw, 80% raw foods, no meats, nothing along those lines, and when they're really sympathetic, and they're really overt parasympathetics is a paleo-based plan, no green vegetables because of the magnesium. So what we see in the autonomic nervous system with these diets, different diets, that these diets are limiting. That there's all these different diets having various success because in different ways they're limiting carbs. They are like in the GAPS diet, they're taking all the enzymes out, they're taking all the green leafy vegetables out, and so we can see an effect on the autonomic system from that perspective, but she limits it. She doesn't have an understanding of the autonomic nervous system. We can see where the other diets are specifically looking at the microbes and not looking to affect the autonomic nervous system at the same time. A better type of dietary approach is possible with the mental health, gut-brain component when we approach the autonomic nervous system. I wanted to throw that in there because I really believe it's the evolution that we're going to go into the next phase of it, and that's why I'm out there talking to so many people about it. So just to pull back, we have soil, we have gut microbiome, and we have brain. Soil must be looked at and understood, and then right to the gut. Like you said, Camille, the soil is it's absolutely powerful and true. It is the gut of the plant. The microbiome is the thank you. It's the soil. It's the soil of our body. It's the soil of our body. Of course, it's the second brain. And to think about those lines, and to pull back and recognize that to affect these systems, we really want to get dirt. Josh acts is right. He's a little bit limited in how he goes about it, but he's absolutely right. Eat dirt. And the example of the dirty sweet salad is a great example of how to get that dirt in. I don't want people just to look, oh, the probiotics and this and that. Our food first approach, get the dirty food, get it into these people, couple it with the raw honey, things like those lines, and recognize just a little bit about the diet you utilize is most likely not exactly on. And that it can be tweaked for some better response. And that's it. I think I'm done right there.
Okay. Yeah, it's 9 o'clock. And Donna wrote that farmers used to taste the dirt as a soil test. I know in organic farming, we used to look at the color of it. Like the darker it was, the more mineral rich it was. And I just want to reiterate that if people are making the dirty salad, to make sure you're using organic vegetables. Otherwise, you're having a pesticide and herbicide salad.
Right. So wait, one other thing. It's not just the fact of having organic, that the land has been regenerated organic, that soil has been rehabilitated. Really important to know that. Yeah, because they can go right over and switch over and call themselves. They're still in it. They're still in a in a toxic soil. Yeah.
Yeah. So know your farmer.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the family to eat fermented vegetables, and I'm thinking that I could create a dressing where I puree it, and then
just do it as a side dish. Like that's
no, they're not eating it. No, they don't want it.
How about sauerkraut?
Nope.
Sauerkraut.
I need to make something out of it where I add stuff that kind of balances it.
Right.
No, I have them all. I have 4 different fermented vegetables in my refrigerator right now, which is a little more than I should be having because it's really just me who's eating them.
Yeah, but be careful. Also, be careful. A fermented product or beverage is not the answer to everyone, right? If your microbiome is normal and healthy, it ferments itself. So you only use fermented aspects when it's necessary, when the dysfunction is necessary. You certainly don't use it when you have a candida or if you have a small intestine bowel overgrowth. You do not want to use fermented vegetables. It's not a placebo. It's not a one size fits all. The fermented vegetables. There's some doctors out there who are totally against it.
Well, I think that my family needs it because I know what they're eating.
Couldn't you try like a kombucha or an apple cider vinegar would have the same effects? I use both of those because good fermented foods are they're hard to find unless they're fermented correctly. A lot of people just put them in. Call it fermented, but it's not.
I get them from the Amish farmer.
Yeah. Use apple cider vinegar dressing and just start there.
I do that.
Yeah. That's what I do.
How about kefir or something along those lines? We're using it to dress.
I've tried it. I could try it again.
And just mix it with a dressing. Mix it. Make
sure.
it
yeah, but you have to make it into something so that you have to make it into something that they are willing to use, that they have been using a version of. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do they drink kombucha?
One of them. I have one that drinks kombucha.
Yeah, mine won't. But there's a big difference with kombucha too. But now they're making some good ones.
I just got ginger water kefir from the farmer today.
Yum.
I'm excited to try it.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, and I have a recipe for fermented ginger ale with whey.
I like that.
Yeah.
I would like that recipe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna make it, and then I'll let everyone taste it maybe and share the recipe.
Yeah. I love ginger anything.
That's a good way to get to the band.
All right, before we wrap up, does anyone have any other questions or what do you think for a topic for 2 weeks from now? We have another one. I don't have the date, but
is Mary Ellen still there? Mary Ellen, do you want to do you want to do one on the aspect of stress, as a stress topic, and
Yeah.
how to the limitations. I love that topic.
Yes.
It's highly limited, the conventional way of thinking in the aspect of just cognitive components affecting stress. Of course, but it's a nice segue into what we just talked about, stress,
Yeah.
because it connects. But also, I would like to bring into it languaging aspects of reframing.
Yeah. I love
language,
that.
things like that. How to mitigate or totally change stress and blah 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 blah.
so what are we calling it?
I don't know. I'll give you a topic in a day or so. let me think. I'm submitting a third article for Natural Awakenings. I'll see if they take it. They've been taking all my articles, but it's their next issue is on suburban and urban agriculture with a secondary topic of the gut, of gut health. So I'm co-authoring an article with Chef Craig Shelton, who is also a business and agricultural consultant for regenerative farming, and calling it, oh my God, it's a really good title. Yeah, I can't remember. I thought of the title for it today. It's about dirt. Oh my God, I can't.
I hope you wrote it down, Don.
I do. It went out to the public.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. But it's about soil and